Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 922B, and today's date is March 18th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Time is Running Out. UK wants to send warships to Libya. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, out in Ukraine, we can see that everything is starting to come to an head. We see Victoria Nuland is involved, saying that Kiev is not going to complete the Minsk II ceasefire. We see the UK is out there, and they're saying that they're going to double up on their military assistance to Ukraine. And we see at this point the US, UK, and other countries are in Ukraine, helping out with the military, training them, bringing in military assets. Victoria Nuland is involved there, and we're going to have to watch that situation very carefully. Now, UN inspectors were looking at the bombings in Yemen, and they visited the Al-Khamiz market in northwestern Yemen, where Saudi bombed hundreds of people in this area. And when they looked, they said there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the attack could have any military goal. The closest target of any value to justify bombing is a small checkpoint 250 meters from the market. This was done on purpose. And the United Nations is saying that most of the carnage is caused by Saudi Arabia and their airstrikes in Yemen. Not really a surprise. And who's orchestrating all this? The United States. Who's selling them cluster bombs? The United States. And when they're looking at this and looking at the figures, it would seem that the coalition is responsible for twice as many civilian casualties as all other forces put together. Virtually all as a result of the airstrikes. Now, it's amazing because on the corporate media, the U.S. government is always pointing the finger. Assad has killed civilians. Russia is in Syria. They have killed civilians. And when this is brought up, they pretend it doesn't exist. Think about it. 6,000 women, children, and men were killed in Yemen by airstrikes. And nothing. So who's really killing the civilians? Because when the UN and the watchdogs look closer at the situation, it's turning out to be the United States time and time again, and their proxy forces. And we see at this point, they will do whatever they have to do to keep their system alive. And their system, to keep it alive, they need to kill a lot of people. Now, when I talk about the US, or I talk about the UK, or if I talk about any other country, I'm talking about the government. I'm not talking about the people. I'm not talking about the people of the country. This is two separate things here. I live in the US. I do not give my government permission to go around killing innocent women and children and men to keep the system alive for them. These are governments that are doing this not for the people, but for themselves, for corporations, for central banks. Now we see out in Libya, the unity government is saying, listen, we're going to take charge within days, and we will be in the capital of Tripoli. Well, that sounds like fighting words. What are they going to do? Well, we see already David Cameron's out there saying that he's going to be sending warships to Libya. Of course, this is all about the migrant trafficking. Has nothing to do where they want to get the unity government back into Libya and bring in coalition forces into Libya to go after those people who don't agree with having this new puppet government. So we can see NATO and many other nations have their ships in the Aegean Sea. Cameron wants to bring in more ships to Libya. And the military troops and assets are all standing by, ready to go. The EU right now is striking a deal with Turkey. They return back to the negotiating tables, and it looks like Turkey might be getting about 6 billion euros. Germany, Sweden, Austria, and a number of other countries are quite literally breaking under the pressure, and everyone is a little nervous because winter is turning into spring, and all the roots are thawing, and they're afraid that Turkey is going to unleash more refugees. We know this is the plan, to cause chaos, to close the borders, to keep capital from moving out of the country, to get Europe so angry to go into Syria and say, okay, we need to end this. And Erdogan right now, he's going off the deep end. He's out there saying democracy, freedom, and the rule of law have no value any longer. He added that those who don't support us are against us, and you are now enemies of Turkey. Didn't Bush say something like this? If you're not with us, you're against us? It seems like all these dictators say the same exact thing. It seems like they have the same message, all these individuals that are part of the central banking system where they're being driven to do one thing and one thing only. And that is to keep the people down, to remove their rights, and to push war right now. And right now we see Ankara is planning to deploy an iron fist against terrorism, which means they're going to be going after anyone that disagrees with the government or tries to report about what the government is doing or is fighting for freedom of speech. Now, the whole entire operation for Russia and Syria cost about $460 million. The U.S., since the beginning, has been spending $9 million a day to fight the same terror group. And Russia was able to accomplish this in a couple of months. The U.S. was going on 18 plus months. And the Islamic State was expanding in Syria and Iraq. And now we see things have dramatically changed. Now, we understand that the Kurds, of course, the U.S. has cozied up to them in the northern area of Syria, because we know that Kerry, his plan B, wants to break up the Middle East. We know NATO, it's the same as plan A. And we see that the Kurdish areas, they're occupied by many more religions and ethnicities than just the Kurds, including Syrian Arabs, Turkmen, and others. But this is the beginning stage of where they want to go with this. And what is more concerning is how the Kurdish declaration matches up with the Western Plan B for the Syria all along, that is the fracturing of the country into separate states based solely on religion and ethnicity. Consider the statement made by Salim Ali from the PYD representative in Moscow when he said that Syrian Kurds expect their experience with autonomy to be spread to other ethnicities and religious groups in Syria. He stated that our experience would be useful for the Alawites and Sunnis. In other words, he is suggesting that not just the Kurds maintain a federalized autonomous state, but the other religious groups should do the same. And we should maybe break the country into an Alawite section, a Sunni section, and a Kurd section, and any other sections that we need. So we can see they're initiating this under the direction of the U.S. This is their plan. They want to do this in Iraq. Actually, Biden brought a plan to the president of Iraq of splitting up Iraq, and they completely said absolutely not. Now, the Islamic State, they're losing more and more ground. They have lost over a quarter of their territory in Iraq and Syria, and they're losing more and more each day. The Syrian armed forces are liberating cities and towns. Russian warplanes, they targeted the Islamic State oil facilities near the strategic town in the province of Homs. And we see right now the Iraqi forces, they have pushed and they're trying to regain Mosul from the Islamic State. So we have all of this going on, and the Islamic State is losing ground at this point in time. Now, as we know, the Islamic State, the moderate rebels, Free Syrian Army, al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, they always resort to chemical weapons when they start losing, or they use them to frame Assad. But we see right now that the Islamic State, they might be pushed right now where they might use chemical attacks maybe in the next couple of weeks, because they are really losing ground right now and they will become desperate. The Syrian opposition group is saying that the Syrian government is procrastinating right now in peace talks, saying that they're really not engaging fully in the negotiations. Well, because the opposition is saying one thing and one thing only: Assad, you must step down. Assad, you must step down. The Saudi Arabia Syrian opposition group believes that Moscow should not be supporting Damascus, and they should separate themselves from Damascus and leave Syria. Now, we see more warnings coming up. The U.S. Embassy in Turkey is warning its citizens, and they've updated the travel warnings inside of Turkey because of fears of another bombing or some type of attack. The U.S. Embassy in Russia has issued a statement saying that there could be some type of an attack in Moscow, and it's warning the citizens there to be mindful of your surroundings. Don't go into crowds. And we can see that we had a bombing in Turkey. Most likely, they're very angry with Russia. They might try something in Russia. And we see that the events here are continuing. Now, they are in Turkey because Turkey is trying to gin up something here where they want to say, listen, we just been attacked. We need to go into Syria. They're doing whatever they possibly can to get this war started. And Erdogan is now cracking down on the entire country because he doesn't want anything reported on in what's going on. And anyone that opposes him, he needs to get rid of, because it looks like that he is the poster child right now of a madman in power, which is going to start war. And it looks like the U.S. has given him instructions. It looks like they're pushing him in this direction. And we are going to see more false flags. We're going to see more events. And we see that the ones that they've done have not gained traction. They can't convince the world that the Kurds are firing upon Turkey, that it's coming from Syria, and it looks like they're going to need to up their game. And this is why they're locking down everything, because these next attacks, these next false flags, are going to have to be much, much larger. And this might even have to be spread into Europe, into the UK, and then into the US, because it looks like the world is just not buying it at this point. So they need to make Erdogan this crazy lunatic where he's going to go all out to start this war. Because as we know, these ceasefire, these peace talks, the only agenda there is to remove Assad and take the country over. Now, to take the country over, they don't care if they have to split it up, as long as they stop the pipeline coming from Iran and they build the pipeline coming from Qatar. As long as they can get a central bank in there and put all their natural resources on the dollar, and then eventually go into Iran. So we can see we are heading down a path here. They have no other alternatives, because we know Assad and the Syrian people are going to say, listen, we will decide who our leader is going to be. You cannot make that decision. The opposition cannot make the decision because most of them are not Syrian. A lot of them are paid mercenaries, paid by Saudi Arabia, paid by the US, paid by the UK, paid by Israel. And we see that most likely these talks are going to go absolutely nowhere. So what does the US and the coalition forces do at this point? They know the Middle East is falling apart. They know they need to get back into Libya. They know they're going to be getting back into Lebanon. They know that the Yemen war is a complete disaster. Iraq is taking control of their country and they're actually fighting the Islamic State. The United States does not like this. Russia is in Syria, causing this huge problem for them where they're stuck in these peace talks where they really don't want to be because they only have one thing on their mind, and that's Assad to step down. So what do they do at this point? They know the system's collapsing. They know it's falling apart. Their backs will be against the wall. Yes, they'll come up with a couple more plans. They'll try to meet their goal. And when all else fails, we will see this huge event. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.